as Anna said, pop them into the chat. Okay, anyway, enough waffling on. So my name's Lucy. As Anna mentioned, I'm an artist and a teacher, and I worked for a long time in London further education colleges, providing support and access arrangements and reasonable adjustments for people with neurodiversity and disability. So I spent a lot of time advocating for my students as well as for myself. So yeah, a lot of my focus of my career has been about access and inclusion. So, and that continues into my work. As Anna said, like I do work around art and science. I'm interested in climate. So this is a piece I did about kelp forests. And this is a piece based on a original artwork called The Dream Machine, and it uses flashing light to stimulate the alpha waves in your brain, because I'm very interested in neurodiversity and perceptual diversity. But what I'm going to talk about today is more about my work around illness. So I live with a chronic health condition, and I really like this quote from Virginia Woolf from her essay on being ill. I'm going to read it. Oh, sorry, I went back there. Considering how common illness is, how tremendous the spiritual change that it brings, how astonishing when the lights of health go down, the undiscovered countries that are then disclosed. When we think of this, it becomes strange indeed that illness has not taken its place with love and battle and jealousy among the prime themes of art. She actually says literature, but I think it should be art. I feel that the experience of illness is much more rich and diverse and nuanced than we're often led to believe. And it is an integral part of the human condition. Illness is part of everybody's experience. And I feel that there's a real sense of uncovering of truth in that experience. It's, as Woolf says, it's the great confessional. Things are said, truths are blurted out, with which health conceals. So I think it's such a rich area for work. And really, when I first started creating art related to my health, I didn't actually see it as part of my health practice. It was more of a way of making sense of what I was going through. So I was sort of diagnosed with a health condition. Well, I struggled to get a diagnosis, but when I was diagnosed, it was when I was sort of in my late teens. And I was sort of had ongoing, this will be a very familiar story to so many of you, but I had ongoing, quite acute symptoms. The test results were negative, and when I went to my GP, I just wasn't believed. And I just really acutely remember the shock of this realization that I'd sort of become an unreliable witness of my own body. And I was now viewed as a potential hypochondriac. And I sort of quite quickly realized that there's this hierarchy of information within the medical model, and the objective scientific view was considered more reliable than my subjective lived experience. And my experience was not to be trusted if it didn't align with the medical view. And I just really started using my sketchbooks as a way of just trying to work out what the hell was going on. Like I just to try and situate myself in this sort of ongoing uncovering diagnosis and sort of navigating the health system. So I started sort of going home after appointments and things and just writing down what was said, and like just sort of revisiting phrases, words that had been used to describe me, images of myself, and just sort of recreating images and words yeah, that was part of the experience. And yeah, I think it was also a way of trying to kind of assert my sense of self within that system. especially towards when I became very acutely ill about 15 years ago and underwent quite a lot of surgery. I just felt very subsumed by the whole experience. And I felt the medical gaze was sort of very reductive. I'm not trying to put myself in opposition to my caregivers in any way, because I have had some absolutely wonderful and beautiful caregivers. But with any system, any health system, um, that it's just a series of people and relationships and bureaucratic systems that we're all trying to navigate. So it was just a way of helping me figure out who I was within that system, if that makes sense. So this image here is actually an image from my sketchbook that I drew after quite an acute pain experience of pain after surgery when my pain really failed. And that image of that ceiling is burned on my retina. Um, but that led to this a kind of a preoccupation with ceilings. So after a while, I began to take my camera into every medical situation that I was in and take a picture of the ceiling. And I found it was really interesting how it affected my relationship with my caregivers, because suddenly I sort of just became much more of a three-dimensional person. It was strange, but really nice in that it kind of just added an extra flavor to my experience within hospital, because you're not really supposed to take pictures in hospital, so I'd have to sort of either be a bit surreptitious about it or have a little chat with someone and see if they would let me take my camera in. And yeah, and it was I think a way that of just finding myself again, if that makes sense. um and this led to more of a kind of a practice that was shared beyond my sketchbooks. So from the seeding project, I also started to more openly share the nuanced feelings that I had about healthcare and illness, because I think I know I was self-censoring a lot. I was very wedded to this idea of being the good patient, keeping my caregivers on side, and kind of conforming to an idea um, of what a kind of rational and good patient was. And I think that's in a response to, not being believed, in that I was just like, well, this has real impact on your care, doesn't it, when you're not being believed? And there are all sorts of reasons why you might not be believed or you might be misrepresented. For me as a young woman, I think there was an element of misogyny in there, but of course, so many things can add to that picture: neurodivergence, institutional racism. There are so many aspects to the relationships we're navigating. But for me, I definitely was conforming and self-censoring a lot. And in my sketchbook, I was sort of letting out all the rage and just all the different feelings, just allowing space for that, just letting it all go, letting it all rip. And I'm showing you this piece because it's just a little picture of the St. Thomas's Hospital, where I had a lot of surgery and received some wonderful care. But I started scratching it out with a scalpel because, as surgery is quite a brutal experience. And there was a lot of fear and rage and grief and anger that I was expressing there. And that led to this piece. So I did a series of screen prints, and I was trying to show the range of emotion. There's gold leaf on there, there's pink, but there's also the sort of despairing of the black ink. I left it in the garden, I stood on it, I scrunched it up, I bashed it up, there's a hole in it. Um, and I think as well, over time, it's sort of become more of a portrait of the NHS more broadly, and sort of how under attack and beleaguered it is. But yeah, this is just sort of an evolution of letting those emotions out, really. Yeah, and now we come to Very Nice Lady. So I made this video actually after Anna suggested that I do this sandpit, and I started putting all the words together that have been used about me. Um, yeah, and I just think it's very hard to hold on to yourself sometimes when you're going through very intense experiences and you are being constantly appraised in every meeting. And my art practice really has been a way of trying to come to terms with that. I'm really questioning the flip side. Like I've always, I often get called a very nice lady in my letters. And it feels uncomfortable because you can imagine what the flip side is: the hypochondriac, the unreliable. For example, I had an elderly relative whose care package was denied because she was deemed to be uncooperative. And I think even though these terms don't seem that weighty, they really are, because they are integral to how we're treated, and they can follow us, and it can have real impact on care. So that's something I've been exploring all the way through my work. And this is actually a piece from my book, Day-to-Day Living, which I'll share with you in a bit. But this is one of the letters which I've redacted, and it has the Very Nice Lady stuff in it. And next to it is a kaleidoscope made from medical imagery of my body, with parts of my body that have now been surgically removed. Okay, so this is my artist book. It's actually an edition of 3, and one book is held by the Wellcome Collection, and another version is held in the Central St. Martin's Museum collection. So yeah, it's for whatever reason it's captured the imagination. So I basically copied my hospital file, which in itself seems like a historical object now, because obviously most of our records were online. So, but I always found it an incredibly charismatic object, and I found the wording just so like a kind of red rag to a bull, really. This case must not be handled by patients or unauthorized persons. And I felt it was just a symbol of the institution. It was about me, but it was not mine. It's the medical view. It's this particular view of me. So I wanted to recreate it, but put my own view and put all of those images and discussions that I've been having with myself through my sketchbooks for years, and to sort of distill them into this piece, which was my view, my subjective lived experience, and to flip that hierarchy. So it has images of me, but partial images, as I'm looking down at my body. And they're all really based on photographs that I've taken on the ward of my body or of the surroundings. So hospital curtains feature strongly, but also writing, and again, partial imagery of my body. And some small acts of rebellion, like having nail varnish on when you're not really supposed to. So, and the ceilings as well, as I mentioned before. And this is also an exploration of the sort of different aspects of illness that I've experienced. Pain is such an interesting sensation because it's so hard to put into words. It's so personal. And we're often asked to like rate it on a scale from 1 to 10 as though that's possible. I feel like my range is maybe much wider than, say, my partner, who will regularly categorize a blister as excruciating, whereas I'm like, you're not allowed to use that word. You know, like when you've had sort of quite extreme pain, I think it's very hard to really sort of talk about it. But I actually think the experience of, or my experience of pain has been quite unusual or unexpected. Not what I imagined pain to be. I think pain is much more varied than we allow for. And I love this quote by Lindsay Allen. This was published in Sick magazine. Can my pain do something else? Take me somewhere else. What would it mean to be a rainforest rather than a gunshot? And for me, pain has taken me other places. I've had quite a few metaphysical kind of responses to extreme pain. And so sometimes I sort of, in my work, think about pain as a portal to other states of consciousness and altered states, such as out-body experiencing and experiencing auras on the ward and mantras. So this piece is about an out-of-body experience I had very early on after my diagnosis on a ward where I left my body. And I've been trying to depict this bizarre experience for many years. Sorry, I'm just conscious of time, so I'll just won't read everything. But I think as well, like with the experience of illness, it is metaphysical and it does make you question the human condition. And certainly one of the things that I've experienced is kind of ego loss and connection and quite profound experience of the idea of our interdependence as human beings and the power of love. Like when I was on the ward going through quite major surgery, and I was constantly like having lines in and needles in and incisions and various things, I felt like my skin was very permeable, but I was often would see like a golden aura around myself, which I interpreted as like a manifestation of love, which I found protective. And that brings me on to compassionate care and love. This is a bit where I'll probably get a bit shaky voiced, but for me, the most powerful experience of illness is being utterly vulnerable and incapacitated and being cared for with compassion. It's a really powerful experience. And it's the one thing that gets me every time. I can talk about pain, but not the love. But I feel that, especially now with healthcare undercuts and attack, you know, the power of compassionate care can't be understated. It's so incredibly powerful. And I think if we're all lucky enough to age to the point where we do develop disabilities, you know, it's part of life, it's part of aging, we will all be so grateful to have access to compassionate care, and it's something really worth fighting for. And the last page says, I'm made differently now after these experiences. And I made the book as a concertina file, so it can stand on it by itself, so it can be a sculpture as well. So just pretty pictures of it. So I think that sort of brings us on to the next part of the talk. So I think Anna will have time for a bit of a Q&A, won't we, after that? And then I think we'll have a little break and then we'll move on to some prompts. But I just wanted to sort of foreshadow that by using this quote by Labaina Hamid. You bring your baggage, your opinion, your life, and I'll bring mine, and let's try to explore it or to talk about it. And yeah, I love this quote because I think we all have, even if our health conditions and experiences of life might be different, there are so many commonalities. So I'll be so interested to see what everyone comes up with the prompts. So anyway, Anna, over to you.
Like Lucy, thank you so much for sharing your work, which is incredible. Like, I just love Lucy's work, and I've had the privilege of seeing the file like a few times now, and it is part of the Wellcome collection. So I do believe that you can access it at the Wellcome if you would like to go and look at Lucy's work. And there's also a video walkthrough of the piece, I believe, on the Wellcome's website, so you can kind of access the file that way. There's quite a lot of comments coming in the chat. I thought what we'll do, because it is really emotional work as well, and you know, we want to care for each other, so I thought maybe we'll just have a few comments back, and then should we just have like a couple of minutes break, and then
Yeah.
we'll come to some creative prompts so everyone can think a bit about this in
Sorry,
relation
that's my timer, trying to keep myself
to
on time.
You're very on time. It's very, you know, don't worry. So there's a lot of love in the chat for you. People asking, you know, to see some of your work, and thanking you for sharing. Someone asks if they can buy the book. I don't think it's for sale, but you can
Thank you.
access it at the Wellcome. Yeah, just a lot of love really, for the work. Loads and loads of lovely comments. I wondered very quickly if anybody had a sort of question or a reflection for Lucy before we gather ourselves for a couple of minutes, and then we will move into some creative prompts. So if you've got a question, you can just come off mute or raise your hand and go for it. No questions. Yeah, I have a question, Lucy. Oh, Rose, you come off mute. Do you have?
Yeah,
Go for it.
I'm desperately trying to think of one because I know it's always the good start when someone does ask one, everything's unfolding. But at the moment, I'm just processing what you've just shared, having had a diagnosis of something a year ago, and then my sister having a stroke, and having worked on stroke wards for 12 years myself as an actor reader.